Okay, we're talking about reading from files now. So I've added yet another one of those imports. So let's go back up here and look at all these dang imports I got. I'll tell you what, let's fix this up. I'm going to make this a little shorter. Since I'm going to be importing one heck of a lot of stuff from the I.O. space, I'm just going to put an asterisk there. And then I'm going to get rid of all these guys. Okay? It just kind of sort of makes things a little cleaner. If you know I'm going to have, I don't know, half a dozen things from the I.O. namespace, well then just import them all and be done with it. Otherwise, every single time I go do anything, it's going to come up and say, oh, but wait, you need to do another import. Okay, so now I have this thing called a file. Now this is weird. This file thing. Okay, hey, let's talk about opening and closing one more time. Now this file writer is embedded inside the print writer. So when I close the print writer, it says, ooh, I have a dependent object, so I'm going to close it as well. So I only have to do one close. This outer close closes both the print writer and the file writer, okay? This guy does not open the file. The file class is about the file. Like, what's its name, and what's its modification date, and, you know, what's its path, and, you know, all sorts of information about the file, but it is not opening the file. Okay. So now we're going to use a scanner one more time. And so I'm going to say scanner. I'm not going to call it keyboard now, right? That'd be kind of weird. So how about, I don't know, how about continuing with my tradition of having very, very short things. I'm going to call it FR for file reader. That's just what I call it. Okay. Is equal to new scanner, except this time I'm just going to say F. Okay? So now I have a new scanner object, and instead of using system in, because system in's the keyboard, right? Well, I don't want that. I want the file to be the guy. Kind of makes sense? Okay. So, so now I just go ahead and do the same thing I always do, right? So, hey, I want to do a loop that's going to read the contents of this file. Which loop type should I use? First of all, do I know how many lines are in the file? No. Well, you might, but only because you wrote the thing. But in general, do you know how many lines are going to be in the file? Probably not. Now, do you want it to happen at least once? Well, maybe not, because what if the file is empty? So it's just going to be a plain old while loop. Just a plain old while loop. Okay. So now I want to ask the scanner, is there something left to read? So FR dot, and then it says has next. Has next. What that means is there's something there, so we can read it. Okay, so then I'm gonna do the same old that we always do. How about just do a string line is equal to FR next line, and then we'll turn right. Doggone it! I didn't make that a capital letter. And then let's output the contents to the screen. So that would be system.out.println line. Okay? Now this is a cool way to read a file that you don't know in advance how big it is. Here's how it works. Is I create me a file object, but that does not open the file. I create me a scanner, and then I ask the scanner, do I have any content? And if it says yes, well, then I read the contents. If it says no, it stops. And so regardless of whether or not it thinks there's any content, I still have to say fr.close. Now, this is a little weird because up to now, we have never, ever closed a scanner. Well, because who wants to close the keyboard, right? Okay, so let's try this. So I'm going to run this guy. Enter number of students. I'm going to fake it out with a 0. And a -1, and my age is 42, And then it spit all that stuff out. My name is Bob, my age is 42, my name is Bob, my age is 42, which is the contents of that file because we wrote to it twice. Okay, that kind of makes sense? All right, so one more time. Why is the while loop the most appropriate one here? Because it may not have any content. So I don't want to have to read it first and then, because if I read it first and it was empty, the next line would throw an exception. Okay, and then remember now that the close here is important, but a little weird because up to now we've never closed the scanner. Okay, so how do you even know that the dang file exists? You know, maybe it would be kind of cool idea that before we take the time and energy to try to open the file, which may cause an error, why don't we check to see if the dang thing exists at all? Well, that's one of the things that the file guy will do for me. I can go here and say something like, if f dot exists. If it exists, then do all this stuff. So only attempt to open the file and read the file and do all that stuff if the file exists. Whoop. Okay. Now pretty cool. So the F guy tells me, you know, is it have the read attribute and does it have this and what's its date and what's its size and all sorts of stuff to include. Of course, does it exist? Okay. So there's an example on page 246 that basically follows what we just did. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is random numbers, which of course has nothing to do with files or loops. Well, maybe a loop. And that is, I want to spit out a bunch of random numbers because I don't know why, who cares? So I need to create something called random. So random R is equal to no random. And what do you think? Is it going to come up and complain? Well, of course it is. I need to add an import. Come on, there. Okay, so if I want to have a bunch of random numbers, like I'm going to do a for loop because I want this thing to run like 10 times. Okay, so I'm going to say for int, I don't know, counter is equal to 0. Counter is less than 9. Why is it less than? And why did I use 9? You know, I could do like this. I'm 10, right? Dang it. But so less than 10 means it goes from 0 to 9, right? Less than 10, 0 to 9. Okay, cool. And it helps if you spell counter correctly. Okay, so now all I want to do is just spit out some random numbers. So if I just said system.out.println and I say r.next, come on. Okay, sorry. Why don't I just spit them out without any quotes? R dot, and then there's a bunch of these guys. And so I say next int. Next int, whoa. Next int 100. Okay. So, let me get so this is going to spit out random numbers for me. The problem here is that the argument, that 100 guy, that is going to tell me that you want numbers between 0 and 99. In other words, it's not inclusive. The 0 is not, the 100 is not inclusive. So you'll never get a 100. You can get 0 and you can get 99. Well, what if I said I want random numbers between 1 and 100? Well, how would you do that? Well, I would just do this. Because the random guy is going to be between 0 and 99, and if I add 1 to it, that means it'll be random numbers between 1 and 100. Okay? That's a little weird. So let's do this guy. So 0 students, minus 1 students, My age is 42. There's that. And so here's a handful of random numbers. And of course, the likelihood of me getting a 1 or 100 are pretty low because they're random. But that's how random numbers work. The argument to the next int guy is not the maximum value. It's one more than the maximum value. And that's kind of important because it's a little weird, but almost all of the programming languages do it the same way. So that's not that odd. Okay. So on page 255, there's a pretty good section talking about common errors to avoid, particularly with loops. The number one problem with a while loop is you somehow don't mess with the loop control variable, so it just goes to an infinite loop. Or some scenario where you forgot to close a file, that's pretty obvious. But read that section. I'm not going to bother to read it for you because you got a book. You can read it on your own. Okay, we've reached the end of this chapter, and I'll see you guys again in the next chapter.